The other half of our theme is celebrating the 70th year of the Outdoor Code. And at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Julie Seton and William Ney, or Father Nayture.
Just say, is this quiet? Yeah. I know, why are they quiet? It's us. This is really his presentation, and I'm here to do the kibitzing.
You all know that's not true. Let me introduce, for those who don't know, Julie Seton. Julie and I go way, way back because I'm an avid fan, as she knows, of her grandfather. And I had the blessing to meet her at the 100th anniversary OA conference. I was on the Leave No Trace staff with Francesca, Matt, and a few others that are here. And I go into the store, as we all do, and they're signing books with, oh no, that can't be her. That's not really her. And I was a bit starstruck. But let me tell you, this star is my buddy. And over the years, we've become very close. We're kindred spirits. We've done a few things together, and we're both avid historians. She's on the history committee, and we love to figure out how things got where they got. And while she says it's my presentation, a lot of this 70 years, we're going to give you a fast forward in the beginning to how we got to the outdoor code. I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Daniel Carter Beard and a few others like Ernest Thompson Seton, but we'll fast forward into the 70 years. But then in those 70 years, for those who don't know me, I got really actively involved for 40 of those 70 years. So I've been personally involved in a lot of things, and so I've tailored part of our presentation along the line, the timeline of the progress of the scouting, through the field books, through the Over the Arrow, through the Wood Badge, through my experience. So a lot of our slides will be just the books, but then we'll provide the commentary. And what we've become good at is I will show it up there and say what I was doing, and she might say, but why did you do that? Why are we doing that? And she has a mind that just loves to peel it back a little bit. And so there'll be times where the slide will probably be a book. And those who know me, I'm the prop guy. If I talk about a book, I'll pick it up. And we'll have that book. And then we'll talk about what happened during that era. But I'm remiss if I don't acknowledge, for those who don't know me, my wife is Mother Nature. We got tagged with that in 1995 at a camp. My last name is Ney, and they called her Mother Nature. So by default, I'm Father Nayture. I'm a little emotional because she's not here. She's at home. And her sister and my wife are taking care of her. She's having some medical issues. And so my daughter is a nurse, is taking care of her because she knew this was important, that this legacy is something we've all lived. I lived, as many of you know, very passionately. I'm a passionate person. And some of you who don't know my history of how did this Marine, yes, I'm a 70% disabled United States Marine, and why I got my hair cut, for those who are wondering, Bill, what'd you do with all your hair? I accepted a challenge to take care of some veterans. And I'm now the commandant of the San Francisco detachment of the Marine Corps League, and I go represent the Marine Corps in a lot of things, so I had to go get it high and tight. Simple as that. And so, but I still am doing scouting stuff. My granddaughter just finished her Eagle project. And when Keith called me, dragged me out of retirement, I said, well, you don't need me, you need Julie. And so I thought Julie was going to come up here and talk. And I called Julie, and she said, aren't you coming? So that's how you got us. So we only have basically 30, 35 minutes to do 70 years. So it's going to be fast and furious. We're going to open your eyes, get you thinking to get ready for the sessions the next 2 days. For those who want to hear a little bit more about my story and some of this history I lived, they put me in, I think, Leighton 1 tomorrow at one of the times about there's a session about a follow-on to this. So you'll get the little bit more detail tomorrow if that's where you want to go with it. So we're going to talk, we're going to go along, and some slides will go fast, some will go slow.
Okay, so Theodore Roosevelt was an incredible supporter of all things having to do with nature. You'll hear on Saturday a little bit more about his perspectives, but today, the wildlife of today is not ours to do as we please. The original stock was given to us in trust for the benefit both for the present and for the future, and we must render an accounting of this trust to those who come after us. Roosevelt wasn't the first person to have this information. It goes back to, I think it was 535?
Yeah. We do a whole thing that we didn't have time for, and it goes way, way back, where this whole notion of we have some ownership in how the earth evolves and what is our role with it. We could all go back to Adam and Eve and the apple and the knowledge now that we have. And what did that mean? But we digress. So we had to move on to conservation and preservation. And we had a couple different groups.
This one's yours.
Okay, the Boone and Crockett Club, it follows on with Teddy Roosevelt, and he had a number of Coronis that were part of this little group in the 1800s, and they were avid hunters and fishermen, and they advocated fair chase of hunting in support of habitat conservation. Around the same time, you had John Muir. And so I've got a number of these books down here. And by the way, I've got a lot of books. You can look at them. I'm going to leave them here tonight. Don't take them. And it follows the story. So John Muir, and yes, this is a early 1900s John Muir. I think the earliest one I have is 1901. And you all know that his preservation was explore, enjoy, let's start the national parks. And then Pinchon Gifford, who became the first of the Forest Service, he wanted to manage the forests, along with several people. And yes, this is an original, and I've got his original Forest Service manuals if you want to see the first Forest Service manual. And he also was with people looking at timber, like, anybody heard of Arthur Carhart and some of his history? Look into that at some point.
Okay, so these men were all part of the beginning of Scouting, but very interestingly, they were also part of the YMCA, Scouting, and the Campfire Club of America. Now, the Campfire Club of America was a sister organization to the Boone and Crockett Club, but it was less formal, and Roosevelt was part of both pieces. Roosevelt was a charter member of Campfire Club, but he was the founder, co-founder of Boone and Crockett. So what's very interesting, and I've just been doing a bunch of research because I was at Silver Bay earlier this summer, and realized that the YMCA had everything to do with the beginning of Scouting. Everything to do with it. Now, what about these men? There were only 2 of the men on this list that were not directly working for YMCA. Ernest Thompson Seton and Daniel Carter Beard. All of the rest of them had very tight connections to the YMCA.
And they ultimately stayed with the YMCA. One of those, which I like to point out, is Charles Eastman, and I've got one of his original books. He was at the Little Bighorn as a 15-year-old, and he has written a lot of the first-hand accounts of the early Native people, but he opted to stay with the YMCA and some of their early Native programs. But he did a lot of work with Ernest Thompson Seton when he was doing the Gospel of Redmond.
Now, there were 3 people who were responsible for the editing of the Boy Scout Manual, the first 2 editions of the Boy Scout Manual written by my grandfather, all before 1911. And then in 1911, a committee took over because, frankly, my grandfather was getting a little bit possessive. Let's just put it that way. Those 3 people were, only I can't see, Hornaday, Eastman, and A.A. Jameson. What's interesting is you don't hear a lot about Jameson anywhere else. But these 3 guys were responsible for recreating the Boy Scout Manual.
And we'll get to that. But before I put this away, they were doing this long before 1910. This is a first edition, 1882, the American Boy's Handbook. You've seen it in a lot of our stores, reprints. Daniel Baird wrote this in 1882. And the other thing that's important, before we move on, because we're going to run out of time,
I know.
is before scouting was born in England, it became too militaristic. So he needed to tone it, and they were loving the West. And so her grandfather went to England and met with Lord Baden-Powell and shared a lot of his works. And he got a little byline somewhere in the back of the book.
The very first edition has both Ernest Thompson Seton and Baden-Powell on the front cover. There was an agreement between the 2, but that's a different story and way, way, way sooner than what we want to talk about.
Here's your busy slide.
You love this slide, come on. You love this slide.
Busy slides, and then it comes up with this.
Okay, so there were some particular things, and what I was intending to do was show that Scouting always had something to do with, had some focus on conservation, some focus on the outdoors. And the pieces in yellow, if you can see them from way back here.
Wildlife protection. Scout War Gardens. The war is over, but not our work is done. President Hoover, National Conservation Conference.
1923, the high adventure programs begin at Northern Tier. In 1924, they started a long career of working with the national parks. They started working with government agencies because who was doing the work? Who was doing the work on conservation at that time? The government. And it was great practice for these youngsters to be involved.
And so we already mentioned this, there were early books, Dan Baird, and a lot of people don't know there was an American Girls Handybook, and yes, I have the early 1897 version of the American Girls Handybook written by the sisters of Daniel Carter Baird, Lena and Adelia Baird, and then of course the Birch Bark Rolls and the Gospel of Redmond by Ernest Thompson Seton.
And notice all 4 of those books, or the people that wrote those books, were involved with setting up the Campfire Club, the Campfire Girls, and they were the first girls' national organization that was the sister organization of the Boy Scouts of America. And it was announced by James West, which I thought was just amazing. But he was part of that team as well.
But we're here to talk about the Outdoor Code. And where did it come from? The Outdoor Code, the nation was understanding we were kind of getting carried away in the outdoors and we needed to take care of it. And clearly the sportsmen, the fishermen, also did share that concern that we want to protect the environment. So the Outdoor Life magazine put out a contest to come up with a pledge. And so the pledge that was in the early handbooks, and I have one down there, came out in 1946. What I found interesting is that the second place winner was Rachel Carson. Anybody ever heard of Rachel Carson? Silent Spring. Yes, this is the first edition of Silent Spring. And we understand that the outcry that came from that, the impact that came from that, created the abolishment of DDT and, as we know it, and what has come back. I work with the steward. I'm a California naturalist. I work for the California State Parks on my side, and I'm with the stewards of the coastal redwoods. One of our volunteers took a picture of these two bald eagles along the Russian River. So that represents that they are coming back. Anybody want my picture? So what did we do? Oh yeah, there's that problem with the changing. That's okay, they can see it. So this is what she was talking about earlier. We had the Forward on Liberties program in the 50s. And so they did a lot of things. They collected aluminum. Many of you have heard that. I see some gray hair out there. Some of you might remember that. And they collected lots of rubber. 20,000 scouts made victory gardens. And so President Eisenhower said, let's expand this Forward on Liberties program to include the outdoors. And if you go to some of these things are on the Outdoor Ethics website. A copy of this letter from President Eisenhower is on the website. And so they said, could you do something about this? Could you help us? Because you've been really helpful with the war effort. And we need, people aren't paying attention to this pledge. So let's do something else. And so, and I saw they've got a copy of this out there. And so they said yes, and Green Bar Bill put out in Scouting magazine in January of 1954, this is our roadmap. And so if you look at the roadmap, they were going to roll out this new code for Americans. What I want you to take home with you, it's code for Americans. We always say for Americans, but it seems to be only for us scouts. We haven't done a good job getting this code out into the community and getting the community to adopt it. So think about that. And so, of course, then there's the infamous Boy's Life, where they published the outdoor code. And I won't pull in here, but all of you know that it's, oh, there it is. This is the real deal. The first publishing of the outdoor code. And then the 2 editions of the manual, and you know, we get different editions, but different printings. And so I've got the exact printing changes from when we went from the pledge to the outdoor code. So that was all in 54.
Can I say something about the need to go out from scouting to everyone? One of the things my grandfather always said, get them while they're young and they will respect nature forever. And I believe the concept was, all right, let's get the boys involved and they will convince their parents to be involved. And those parents will convince their friends to be involved. And suddenly we've got all of America doing conservation work. That's the dream.
And so then we had Boy Scouts in the 60s. Again, I see a few of you might remember this. I vaguely remember some of this. And the 60s themes were targeting what they call the urban scouts. And as you see, they focused more toward child health, low-cost housing, literacy, food production. But guess what happened? In the middle of all this, Green Bar Bill retired in 1965. He took his wife on a European trip and was gone for quite a few years. And then, unfortunately, his wife passed away in 1972. And so after she passed away, he came back and he looked at his scouting program because he took it real personal. Because he wrote a lot of the early patrol handbooks and handbooks. The 7th edition he wrote and all that. And in the 8th edition, it was the most radical changes we've ever seen. And it de-emphasized camping, making outdoor skills optional. they eliminated outdoor merit badges from the required list for the higher 3 ranks, and the Eagle list dropped camping, cooking, nature, swimming, and life-saving.
And although all that was happening, the outside view to the public was that Scouting was still doing reduce, reuse, recycle. So internally, there was this de-emphasis.
And what was happening in the 70s? Earth Day came about. Gaylord Nelson. This was, for those who don't know it, it started on a college campus. And he said, they're having all these sit-ins for the war and for this and that. Why can't we do one for the earth? So he put the word out across the college campuses. And of course, even if you weren't then, you know that back in when we had the oil spill at Santa Barbara, we were trying to save Mono Lake, 3 Mile Island, Karen Silkwood. These should all be familiar. Let me tell you, part of my 7% disability is exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. Some of this is personal. Okay? So, ponder this. At that time, we had 5 million scouts in the 60s. Even though they were urban, they were getting they weren't all just in the parks, in the towns. They were still doing some camping. They were getting some message out. Something was happening. They still had the outdoor code, and I like to think that when I did some research, and this is not, of course, it's AI Google stuff, anywhere between 45% to 65% of the college students during this time had had a scout experience. They may not have been an Eagle Scout, but they had been a Cub Scout, some kind of a scout program. So you think about that, 5 million scouts, leaving the 60s, going into, where are they going in the 70s? A lot of them were going to college. There was a high percent of scouts that were going to college. So how many across this country for Earth Day, how many of those young people do you think were impacted by their scouting programs? Think about it. In the meantime, something very personal to me was Mono Lake. If you haven't figured out by now, I know MJ knows a little bit about my writer partner over there. My family, I still have the homestead document for the Nay Ranch alongside Mono Lake. So that's personal to me. When Los Angeles started taking our water. But they didn't listen to us farmers. They listened to the Audubon Society, and they got their scientists in there. And finally, California Supreme Court pulled out some other things, and they determined that, yeah, the state does have a duty to protect the public's common heritage of streams, lakes, marshlands, and tidelands.
And this follows from the 1842 federal Supreme Court decision that states would in fact have that responsibility. It was specifically stated, and the case that they were caught with, that they did this about, was restricting a landowner from not allowing people to get oysters from the mudflats in New Jersey.
Anybody from New Jersey?
Did you know that?
So guess what happens? Greenbar Bill spent a good bit of time grieving for his wife, and he sees what's happening to scouting, said, I can't leave it alone. I didn't realize it, but when I went to I got involved in scouting about 84, 85, so this is 40 years for me. I went to my first Scoutmaster Fundamental in 1986, and they kept saying, if you take the outing out of scouting, all you have is scout. Has anybody ever heard that? That came from Greenbar Bill. Did you know that that came from Greenbar Bill? And he came in and said, we've got to put the outing back in scouting. And so he talked them into, and if you didn't know which was the infamous 8th edition. Come on, boo. The 8th edition. And so Greenbar Bill came out and did the 9th edition. Who is the youngest outdoor ethics person here? Who's the youngest? Who thinks they're the youngest? Stand up.
Clark is. Oh, wait. We may have one younger.
How old are you? How old are you? I'm 30. How old are you? When's
It's
your
time.
birthday? March. When's your birthday?
Whoa!
Come here.
Clark gets it.
Oh, you're younger? Oh, you're younger. Okay.
March is younger than January?
I was born in the 80s.
Some of you know I've been giving away some of my extras because I'm getting to the retirement age. And my granddaughter's going to get all the cool signed first editions. But I got to get rid of some of this stuff. This is the 9th edition signed by Greenbar Bill. We are expecting a lot from you and all of them, but you have a lot more years to make a difference. Thank you.
In the 1985 version of the Boy Scout Handbook, there was one paragraph left of the beginning, and it was the paragraph that my grandfather wrote on building a log cabin. Just a bit of history.
So then we had the 10th edition, we had the 90s, and these were much like the earlier versions, but then Greenbar Bill turned these over to Bob Burkby, and that's when we first started seeing in the book, on the 11th edition, the Leave No Trace Low Impact camping in the next versions. Then, oh yeah, this is part of my passion. You also know that all of a sudden in the 90s, as we're coming out of all this, we had a vice president that was trying to take this serious, was trying to get the country to take it serious, Al Gore. And so the first thing he did when he came in as vice president is he went to the director of Central Intelligence to establish an environmental task force. And he got 70 of the world-renowned scientists to come together, and they had to get security clearances put on them, and they were given access to sensitive classified information to see how much of this information could be used to help the future. So now, keep in mind, I went to Scoutmaster's Fundamental in '86, as we're going along. I changed from the Bay Area to go to work in the Department of Energy headquarters. And so when Al Gore comes in the 90s, here I am with the National Capillary Council with my sons in scouting, and I was at a little Camp Airy. Our Baltimore people might know when we used to run Camp Airy up there by Camp David. And I was a senior national security advisor to the director of science. And my job was to hold all these scientists' hands, and I had to go to all those workshops with them. So here I am, all of a sudden, I heard from scientists what's going on. And so my passion started to build. So those who didn't know it, I was on Al Gore's environmental task force to use intelligence data. Maybe tomorrow, if somebody wants to know what we learned, some of it is declassified. A lot of it still isn't declassified. And so then I'm doing more things, and then they had this, who's been to Wood Badge? Raise your hand, been to Wood Badge. You got to ride a ticket, don't you? So here I'm on the environmental task force in the 90s, 93, and then I go to Wood Badge, the old Wood Badge, before the 21st century. And so I decided I wanted to go to the World Jamboree, to the Global Development Village. I wanted to infect the world. I want to take on the world. I wanted to attend the National Camp School. My first camp school was in '95 in Camp McMorris near Memphis. Anybody out there been to McMorris? And I wanted to establish, even before they even were thinking about STEM, I created a program because I was the nature director at Camp Airy, but I was at the Department of Energy. I had access to scientist now. And so I created a program, Science, Energy, Environment, Conservation, SEEK, was my program at Camp Area. And yes, most of you know that's Bill Nye. And I do get a question, Bill Nye? Are you Bill Nye? And I say, no, I taught Bill Nye. Okay? So you see, I was a national judge for the National Science Bowls in Washington, D.C. for 10 years, and one of our guest scientific judges that came in 2 different years was Bill Nye. And yes, he thought it was a hoot that Bill Nye was teaching Bill Nye. And then one of my things was to go to camp school. And I'm not going to go through all of this. Did you want to mention, you were enamored a little bit of this.
Ah, yes.
You had some history of this.
Yep. If you look at the badge itself, it is really reminiscent of the Campfire Club of America badge. It has everything to do, first, everything is symbolic, and all of the symbolism Bill has put here. But the antlers, something in the center, this is a teepee. It wasn't a teepee in the Campfire Club. It's actually a chowder pot because they're feeding folks. But the first time I saw this, I was like, oh, that looks remarkably like Campfire Club. So it comes back to us.
For those who never got to see Father Nayture in his glory, where is it? Where is it? I have it. It's right here. I never go anywhere without him. So yes, I'm a Californian. So I left Washington, D.C. and went back to California. You can only take so much of Washington, D.C. in the Beltway. So I did my stint, my service as a bureaucrat, came back out to the West Coast, but I came back as Father Nayture, and then I found out about the Lorax. Has anybody ever heard of the Lorax? How many know that this book was banned in schools? Certainly in the California logging areas. It got banned in some of our schools. And I brought all of this and I stayed with the National Camp School. I spent 10 years as a lead instructor, and I decided there were a lot of master educators and other people in scouting that really didn't know ecology conservation. So I made sure that most years that I was a lead instructor, that I handpicked various people to come and be my co-instructor. Mike, MJ, nature guy, came one year. Toby, anybody know Toby Green or Green Toby? She came one year. Jim Luisi, anybody remember Jim Luisi? So I would always bring some other people that were master educators but really didn't understand the woods to come be my co-instructor, because that cross-fertilization I thought was important. And of course, I got in trouble, especially with Mike Dyback. He's laughing because that's the scout executive in Marin. He's very particular about wearing scout headgear at formation. But I tricked him because if you look here closely, I got those hats at the National Jamboree, and they all say Scouts PSA on them. And so he couldn't stop me from, for those who know me, I'm always dressing up in something. And so yes, we infected the camp with the Lorax. And this has become a mantra, hopefully for all of you, that unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And yes, actually, this was not at Scouts. The other thing I've been telling you, you got to get out in your community. I'm with the Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods, and I go into a lot of classrooms in our area. And so a lot of people outside Scouting know me as Father Nayture as well. You don't have to do all of this in a closed community. You need to go share it out in your YMCAs, your schools and stuff. So that was in a school. The Order of the Arrow. And so I'm getting myself more and more into this stuff. And I'm in the OA. I've been in the OA for a long, long time. I never got vigil, because you have to be special to get vigil. That's all you should be. So, but then I come to find out, I come back, where's my friend Marshall? Is Marshall here? I gotta fast forward. Where's Marshall? Oh, I didn't put that slide in here. I'll go forward to it just for fun. I got extra slides. There's Marshall. It's in my backup slides. Marshall, you see that? I went to one of the first Master Educator courses at Philmont. And there's Dan. I was there with Dan. Who doesn't know Charlie? And where's Marshall? Ah, back there. And yeah, I had a little bit of my hair back in those days. So I had gone to camp school, and now I'm getting pulled in a way, and I said, wait a minute. I read things. I'm a bureaucrat. And I read the purposes of the OA. And our OA wasn't being very good in the environment. And I don't know if that's true with some of yours. A couple of years ago, I think the last time I had an OA conference here, I came and taught a class on how to use the OA in getting your outdoor ethics message out. Anybody come and see that class that I took back in the day? Well, what I found out, why they didn't have it before that, is because in the early printing, they were to promote scout camping, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about the environment. It wasn't until the 2009 NOAC when they rolled out, it's on that, maybe that tape. Anyway, they rolled out with the picture. This was the regular one, but if you went to the 2009 NOAC, you got the special edition with a little pamphlet, and they had changed the purpose of OA in 2009 to add environmental stewardship as part of the mission. So before 2009, even OA didn't have that as a mission. I took that to heart. And the next few Leave No Trace trainer courses, and I'm fortunate because I'm the steward of the Coast and Redwoods, I would get free camping sites at Bullfrog Pond at the Armstrong Redwood Reserve. And we'd go up in the Redwoods and do our Leave No Trace courses. And, hey, here's Ron. Somebody from Oregon knows my buddy Ron. He moved up to Oregon, Cascade. So do we have an impact when we move? You bet. And so, another one of my buddies. Hey, anybody recognize this guy? So at the NOAC, that's why at the 100th anniversary, they had several Leave No Trace classes at the OA in 2015. It wasn't by chance that that was happening. And of course, I got to meet Julie Seton out there signing her books. And the rest is history, right?
He scared me.
But what happened? We made a difference. We ended up, Redwood Empire Council got the 2015 Western Region Innovation Award, and at the national meeting, our Scout executive got to go up there and get a $1,000 endowment check for our camping program. Were they happy with us? You bet. But we calculated all the hours, all the cub units, all the camp areas we went to, and that's what you have to do, is you get that metrics to show what that impact is. What we did back at school, one thing I forgot about here, because we want to talk about the impact that we have. So I talked to my nature directors, and all of them, their role is not just to teach them merit badges. I taught them, you go to aquatics, you go to firearms, you go to everywhere, and infect them with outdoor ethics. And you bring it, you always have a what's it table. I hope all your camps have a what's it table, because I required all mine, so that every time you go to lunch, you have to do a what's it to bring the outdoor ethics to them. So I asked them, how many camps do you do a summer? And they said, oh, we do 5, we do 2, we do 7. How many scouts do you have? We do 200 a session, we do 400 a session. When I finished calculating for this small group, I came up with 30,000 scouts just that one year that were going to get the message. Now you count all of you and all the camps that you go to, And you think of how many people you're getting that message to. And then the Conservation Handbook came out in 1991. And we had the pleasure, you got to invite these people. A lot of these people will come if you invite them. I guess Kelly's not here.
Not yet.
Not here yet?
No.
She'll be here tomorrow. She was at the time with Mount Diablo Silverado Council. She was great at bugging people to come to her Hornet Day weekends, to her outdoor ethics weekends. And we got Bob Burkby. So I've got 2 or 3 signed books. You know, the infamous new field handbook signed by Bob Burkby. And Bob, if you didn't know, did lightly on the land, and he's a mountain climber. Fascinating book to read. To understand, you know, that passion. And wasn't he a conservation director of Philmont at one point? Yeah. Yep. Call him. He's approachable. He gets out there with you. In fact, just like she was saying, well, this is your show, Bill. It's not mine. No, you can see she's contributing, and so did Bob. When we were out there and we were trying to explain things, he said, well, you just tell them. I said, no, Bob, they also need to hear from you. And he comes out. So sometimes it is good to invite the Julie Setons and other people to come. So he even signed it to Father Nayture. Isn't that cool? I got simple pleasures, you know. And then we had the 13th edition where they said, let's discuss leave no trace. Let's demonstrate leave no trace. And then the 13th edition, Tenderfoot, tell how you practiced the outdoor code. Explain and practice leave no trace. And explain and practice tread lightly. Now, I haven't been involved at the national level lately, and I don't want to hear it anymore, but I hear they're taking some of that out. That's not good to hear. Don't tell Greenbar Bill. So then we came up with some positions. My proud outdoor ethics advocate. I was the outdoor ethics advocate for the Redwood Empire Council and also for our neighboring Piedmont Council for a while. I'm emeritus. We've got somebody else doing that because I'm busy on the side doing a lot of veteran work. But I still obviously get out and about sometimes. But one of the reasons why they did away with the Leave No Trace trainer back then was they're having a heck of a time nationwide getting people to get youngsters to a 16-hour overnight course in amongst everything else they were doing. And they decided, well, for what they're doing, they only need like a 3 or 4 hour course. And my good friend here, Keith, came up with a pilot that I borrowed and used for quite extensively down in the Redwood Empire Council. So I was one of the first ones to pull your pilot for teaching the new Outdoor Ethics Guide. And one of the first Outdoor Ethics Guide in my Troop 848 was Ash Nay. The walnuts don't fall far from the apple tree.
That's right. You put that on Facebook. I got that.
And so, Scout BSA in the 21st century. I had to do it. And you know, it's not just here. We just had another, fortunately it wasn't scouting this time. But how many remember the Goblin Valley? Certainly Utah people remember the Goblin Valley. This was so powerful because they said, you're not coming to our camp anymore, scouts, until you all get trained. And so Keith and others put together a master course, and we had a big master course. And at that master course, I was gifted Wilderness Ethics by Doc Adams. Thank you, Doc. Because yes, they called Father Nayture and said, would you come and help us put on this crazy course? We have to do this. And what was powerful about it, they brought the park rangers. And when we had that sit around and talking about ethics, you know what we were talking about. With the park ranger that was there, that was impacted. Did you want to say anything about that little course? No? But that was cool.
That's just a third of the people.
Here I am with my beard. That was when I still had my beard.
There's 2
Where's
Oh my
where's
goodness.
my buddy Casey? Are you in the picture? You still here? He must have gone. Later on in the week, I'll dress up. So we had a camporee based on outdoor ethics. I didn't do this, my scouts did it. My Orca Lodge scouts. I said, I want not only the outdoor code, but I got them to do the tread lightly, and I had them do the leave no trace, and they did all of them in Yoda speak. And I'll have them out. I've got cards, and I'll put them out tomorrow or the next day. They didn't give me enough time tonight. But you got to go with what the youngsters are doing and engage them. When you let them create the message, much more powerful. So these were done by my Orca Lodge scouts. And I had fun dressing up too. But why have I been giving you? Have you seen the backdrop the whole time? It's Mono Lake. And I already gave you a clue that that's where my family was. That was my great-grandfather's boat. And in May 31st, 1898, Winslow Ney went out on Mono Lake with 5 others. He was the county supervisor. He had abolished toll roads. You think he was popular in Mono County? You bet. But he took all his friends out. The boat capsized. Spoiler alert, he's still in the bottom of Mono Lake. Never recovered. So, Mono Lake is special in my heart. And so this is 2007. See the dock? See the lake? Was the lake receding? Just a bit. And I'm still working on my closing thoughts. Would you have a few before I give mine?
The 70 years of the outdoor code, you can tell, is quite the passionate topic for not only Father Nayture, but I imagine, just watching your faces, that it is for each one of you as well. Knowing some of the history about it, I think, is really important. Not only the history of it itself, but the prehistory as well. So what do you think? Is it time to continue to go out and talk to not just your scouts, not just your scouters, but to the parents, to the schools, to the libraries? Tomorrow I'm doing a short bit on building a nature quiz. Get them outside. I am so frustrated when I go to my youth events and they're not going outside. Oh, let's go get ice cream. Ice cream's great, but let's go outside. Let's figure out what's in that ice cream that's important. Why is it so delicious? Why don't they make it themselves? Why don't we get some skill building going on and using the outdoor code to help push it?
And I kept trying to figure out, I had somebody else's quote, and Julie said, Bill, you ought to put your own quote up there. And I've been struggling the whole time, and I was talking to, he got to listen to me for 2 days traveling here. Poor Yoshiko kept falling asleep. And the message is clear. It's back with the Lorax. It's not all those other people out there. It's each one of you. Now, obviously, all of you are here. So that's a great first step. But what you need to do is take that passion, like I showed you over the last 40 years. I've been sharing that passion with young people, engaging them, letting them have fun. Actually, my wife made 4 of those Jedi Master robes. And so it wasn't just me. It had 3 of my Orca Lodge people wandering around the camp, and they loved it. But first and foremost, it has to be you. And you, and where's that baby? And you have to set the example yourself. You have to model the behavior you want people to see and do. They have to believe. You have to not just stand there and just say, well, let's recite the outdoor code. You know, you've got to share that passion. That will get their passion going, and then work with them, take them out, and yes, engage people at the Boys and Girls Club, people at the YMCA. Partner, you probably don't realize it, but if you went down there, those young people running those programs are struggling. They don't get paid a lot of money, and if you go in there and say, hey, how would you like some help putting on a Pinewood Derby? We got a track. Oh no, and while you're doing that, then you start giving them the other stuff. But you've got to get you yourself have to walk the walk. You have to talk the talk. You have to engage yourself and be passionate about it. Then you have to get those around you doing that as well. Then you go forth and mold. And trust me, in all the years that I've been doing this, it has always worked. The excitement when we were walking down through the deer trail at Shaver Lake that one year, and I've been trying to get them to understand how to find tracks, and that young future nature director found that mountain lion track. Got excited. And that was a decade ago, and we're still Facebook friends. So I encourage you to think about, that's why we're the opening night, we're at the end, 9 o'clock. Think about all this, and then take this and use it to pick your classes tomorrow. And both Julie and I are going to be here for the next 2 days. We're not running out. We're going to be here. She's really approachable. I tell a lot of stories. Be careful. Julie.
I would also encourage you to, one of the programs that I have seen work, twice at least, but that's because they're on the other side of the country, is Marty Brazo's Seton Scout Naturalist program. It's really, really good, and it's flexible. How many of you have presentations, have programs that your scouts and scouters love to attend? Raise your hand.
I do.
I do. Marty does.
I'm glad somebody does. It's late. Julie.
It's important. That's all. It's just important.
And I'll talk about some of these things later. World Jamboree, National Jamboree, Canadian Jamboree. I even got to go meet the Commissioner of Scouting in Delhi, India. That's Mr. Bechtel. I thanked him for the $50 million. He's a distinguished Eagle Scout out of Piedmont Council when I was the Piedmont Council Outdoor Ethics Advocate. And that's me in my buckskin. Who can't pose for a picture in boy's life? That's not real. I was at the Jamboree, you have to stand there and do that. But that was on a riverboat. I was on a riverboat and had that chance to fix my buckskin, so I was sitting out there fixing my buckskin because I hadn't taken time. The people on the riverboat thought I was part of the entertainment.
It's late.
Okay. That's it. Oh, one more thing. Where's the bag?
What bag? Oh,
For
yes.
Keith.
Where did you put it?
Keith, we need you.
Where'd you put it? Did you leave it over on the other?
Say what you're going to say and I'm going to find the bag.
Anyway, I want to thank both of you. I have a challenge coin for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Keith, get up here. We have a gift. Ernest Thompson Seton, in 1925, everybody loved his books, so they made a library. They made a library of all of his major works and published it. This is the 1925 edition of Ernest Thompson Seton's book with a promo flyer for it. Thank you for all you've done for the Utah folks. Thank you. Thank you for being my friend. Thank
It was out earlier.
Yes.
I don't know where it
It's
is.
the
Anyway, just a couple of tidbits on the outdoor code. Has it always been the same? How was it different? Anybody know? Well, in the first edition of the Conservation Handbook, they wanted to try to make the outdoor code more universal around the world. So instead of it saying as an American, it said as a citizen of the world. And when they did the next edition of the Conservation Handbook, they went back to as an American. And I've been asked many times whether or not keeping the outdoor code with that wording is in our best interest, particularly as we're trying to reach a more diverse audience. However, we've got to remember that we are an American organization, and we say the Pledge of Allegiance. And it is perfectly understandable that a scout who may not be an American citizen may not feel comfortable. And we certainly would not encourage them to not say the outdoor code and welcome them to insert whatever language they feel comfortable with. In addition to that, the Outdoor Ethics Committee discussed at great length the section that's be careful with fire. We always felt that it was too limiting, that it was, it was a major concern, but it was not the only concern. And maybe we should change that. Well, I jumped on that bandwagon and I went to bat for it. And at one point in time, we were going to say, be careful with our impacts. Eventually, we boiled it down to adding those 3 words to the outdoor code. So it was be careful with fire and other impacts. And I went up the ladder trying to fight for that, and I'm lucky that I'm still in scouting. They threw me out of the room, but not out of scouting. The outdoor code is not something that the organization wants any modification to. They like it the way it is. We are welcome to interpret it and provide guidance to match our programs and to match our needs. But the outdoor code as it's written will stay the way it is today. Does anybody have any questions for Julie or Bill Nye? We're running late, but I want to take the time to at least give them a chance to answer any questions.
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye. You caught me early with that, sorry.
I'm on the stage
Father
tomorrow
Nayture.
if you want to come fix my brain.
Well, let's have a great weekend. I look forward to having a chance to chat with each and every one of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to anybody on the committee or any of us if you have any questions or concerns. We have a busy day tomorrow. You're welcome to hang out and enjoy some fellowship and networking. Again, there is a late movie at 11 o'clock for anybody that is unable to go to sleep. It'll be a nice documentary called Chasing Coral, and I'll do it up in 2. All right, so thank you. Have a nice night.